Okay, so Mimi, when it comes to relationships, we talk about online dating red flags. What are some texting red flags?
Sure, yeah. Well, lying. I don't think anybody wants to be with a liar, right?
How can you tell a liar from a text?
So there are certain features in language that people will use when they're being dishonest. And the first is that they want to emotionally distance themselves from the statement. It didn't really happen, right? It's not really true, so they're not aligned with it. What are they going to do when they're emotionally distancing themselves from it? They're going to drop the I pronoun, that first person pronoun.
So what would that show up as?
You'll say a sentence, instead of saying I did something, you'll just drop it and tape it as, went to a bar last night, and you won't put the I in. And now sometimes people just do that for shorthand reasons, but I think if you notice a person chronically dropping the I pronoun in situations where you're wondering if they're lying.
It's kind of like they don't want to be responsible or be accountable.
That's right. It's also, it makes the statement feel like less of a lie when you don't have that I in there. So,
this is coming up for me because everybody hates this. What does it mean when someone says K or KK? Like, that irks some people. Is there a meaning to that? Did you do any research regarding that response?
Well, there's certain things that people seem to perceive rude over text. And so ending your sentence with a period is one. People
Who does that?
People find that rude, right? A lot of people think okay is rude too. And so I think the K or the KK, the KK in particular, is a way to soften that and make it seem like, no, I'm
it's
cool,
not just that
cool,
capital K.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Caps locks.
Caps locks. Caps locks has definitely pay attention to me quality, right? And so that can be because the person is either being grandiose or because they're insecure. And honestly, those things are often two sides of the same coin. So, somebody whose ego is a little fragile might do more all caps.
Got it. Are there any other red flags that would be obvious or that we should look for?
Yeah. So lying, that we talked about lying, but there are other clues to lying too, like too much detail, not enough detail, dodging the question, using a lot of, hey, to be honest with you, or honestly, or I'm not gonna lie. Those can all be actual signs of lying. What are the red flags? I think, one red flag early on is what I call instamacy. I made up that word. That word, but it's like instant intimacy, right?
Well, we also call that love bombing. There's a word for that.
Yeah, love bombing. And it's promising too much too soon, acting like you're way deep into a relationship before things have really gotten off the ground. I think the problematic thing about that is some people really get hopeful when that happens. They think, okay, this is it, this is the one. But actually, that's a sign probably of less secure attachment, So a more secure person's going to take things at a reasonable pace.
Well, let's talk about humor, because a lot of my clients, they struggle with the kind of humor, how to be funny on text. Is it okay to crack a joke? Can you talk to me about humor? Was that something you studied?
Sure, and humor is, of course, it's a wonderful trait. Like, I think we all like to be around people who have a sense of humor, and it brings joy to our lives. It's interesting, you can break humor down into 4 different types of humor. And so it's not so much the humor, it's how you're using the humor. And one way to use humor is to create connection and to bring people together. That's a wonderful way to use humor.
Now, is there examples of how to use humor to connect?
Yeah,
there's text
there are.
Examples.
I give text examples of how to, use humor to create affiliation, and that'll often be pulling something that somebody says and making a joke that will make them feel good about themselves in the process.
I'm
right?
almost thinking, like I said, what do you have for dinner? You said you're a great chef. bet you couldn't cook better than I can.
Right, exactly.
You know, there's some funny kind of thing.
It's using the humor to connect and to make the other person feel good. The other way we can use humor, of course, is to kind of make the best of what's a difficult situation. That's also a really nice thing because people like that will, you know, and so let's say you forgot to reply to their text, they might tease you about it, like, you know, in a nice way,
I'm in the doghouse now.
Giving you a way out, you know,
okay.
and so it's just making light, and that's nice. But a really negative way to use humor is to put somebody down, right? And so
like sarcasm, but like
sarcasm or
unwelcome sarcasm.
Yeah, or negging somebody, you know, teasing them in a mean-spirited way, and that's a red flag. I think if somebody's doing that to you early on, using humor to kind of put you down, that's probably only going to get worse as the relationship progresses. And then the last way people use humor is to put themselves down. You know, think of Woody Allen or self-deprecating humor. And
what's that a sign of?
Well, it can be charming and endearing at first, but it often,
if it's continual.
But if it's continual, it often can reflect again a less secure attachment style. You know, and so I think that can also sometimes be a red flag if somebody's doing a lot of that initially, is putting themselves down.
Now, when you see that as a person, is that something that you can call them out on, or just not even call them out, but maybe have a serious
way, an affiliative way,
have a serious conversation?
You could, you could. You know, I mean, it depends what stage of relationship you are in, but I think if you're going to do it early on, you just want to, you know, lightly comment on it, not really grill them. Yeah.
Now, what's your feeling? And maybe it's not a treatment for everyone, or it's not a one size fits all. But what is your feeling about discussing some of these really important matters, talking about issues that maybe you're afraid to discuss in person? I feel like sometimes people will ask me as a coach and as a matchmaker, is it appropriate to say this by text? I don't know how to say this in person. And when should you take text to an in-person conversation?
Yeah, great questions. When I wrote the book,
I want to know this. I've been giving advice. I'm not going to tell you what I say, but I mean, my advice has worked, but I've got the real expert here, so.
When I was writing the book, I joked that I needed to have a sidebar with like 10 subjects you should never discuss over text.
Okay.
You know, honey, I'm pregnant.
Oh my God.
You know, I mean, there are obviously.
Will you marry me?
Obviously, some things we don't want to go there over text. But, you know, I think where text can be useful is
breaking the ice.
When you're trying to have a hard conversation where you need time to be thoughtful about your reply, and you don't want to be in a situation where your heart rate's going to go up, or you're going to feel uncomfortable in person, sometimes it can be helpful to have those conversations asynchronously, where you can pause, really listen to the other person, and give a more thoughtful response. But it is so important to know when to take it in person. And I think if you're getting into the state where there's misunderstanding, or you're not sure what the other person means, that's a great time to just say, you know, I think this is better for an in-person conversation. And then when you have that, you can actually make eye contact, hold the person's hand, give them a hug if you need to.
Right.
You know, and do things to soothe the situation that you're not going to be able to do over text, right?
Here's another issue. I'd love to hear your perspective and how you would coach if someone was in your office. I took my time. I wrote this heartfelt text. I like my life and soul went into this message, and it was unread, or they never read it. And that's the way that I communicate. What's your response to that? What would I do?
So, I mean, I think that says something about the other person's motivation in the relationship. They likely have not read that message either, because they're avoiding the issue that you're talking about, so they don't want to go there.
Okay.
They don't want to deal with that.
That's okay.
Or they don't want to deal with you, right?
Well, that's kind of the obvious one, right? Like, what do I do? Well, I don't know.
It might be time to reassess, you know, how much you have invested in this relationship. But I think more often it's that they see the first little bit of it and they're like, oh, I'm not ready to go there right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's making them uncomfortable. So you might want to give it a little time to see if they will go there. And if they don't reply to it, then I think then it's a cue to take that to an in-person conversation and say, hey, I sent something. I wanted to check in to see how you felt about it.
Yes. Here's where a lot of dating anxiety comes in. It's the response rate, right?
Yeah.
Especially on a dating app when you may be having multiple conversations, or perhaps the person doesn't use the app all the time, and now you're building this anxiety. So let's talk about the post-date text.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there's rules for this, but should the woman text first? Should the man text first? Should he say, should he ask, did you make it home? Should he wait 3 days until after they have a date? Is there any research or study on that?
I mean, there's tons written on this, none that's particularly scientific. My personal opinion is there really are no rules around this, but obviously early communication conveys enthusiasm.
Okay, I like that.
So I think if you want to convey enthusiasm, then texting sooner than 3 days is obviously a good idea, right?
Sure.
And you know,
and the enthusiasm, aka priority, because sometimes people feel like, look, if they're in a busy time and they've not communicated, that's one thing. Is communicating you're in a busy period. Oh, sorry, like during last week when it was Halloween, my daughter was sick all week. So I was not as responsive as I normally would be.
Yeah.
And I think it was afterwards I apologized and say, you know what, I'm so sorry, my daughter was sick, whatever. But it's an opportunity to not repair, but to explain that behavior. Whereas I feel like a lot of people, they just don't even give them insight.
Yeah, I think you want to think about what effect your texts are having on the other person. Obviously, people do pay attention to response rate. They pay attention to how much attention you're giving them. I mean, that is how we communicate our interest, is by paying attention to each other. That brings us into a very important subject that I talk about in the book, which is that, how does chemistry get conveyed over text?
Yes.
If you're in person with somebody, if you're at a restaurant or at a bar with them, you kind of know if they're interested because they're making eye contact right there. They'll even mimic your body gestures and lean in, so there are physical signs. Over text, we don't have the facial expression, we don't have the body language, we don't have the eye contact, but we do something else, which is that we mimic each other's language. And we do it rather unconsciously. So if I'm into somebody, or if they're into me, they're gonna do what's called language style matching. And that doesn't mean they're using the same words, but it means that we're using the same small words in our language, those stealth words, the pronouns, like pronouns, articles, prepositions, those will get matched, and you start to see that the sentences start to look like each other in the same way that people mimic body language in person.
Well, I'll say this, based on someone's texting skills or lack of, it greatly impacts attraction.
Yeah.
What can you share about texting and attraction? What's the relationship?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that it does get into this idea of how we express interest and love. And for some people, the written word is going to be a much more important way to get their attention. That they're going to be attracted to somebody who has good word skills. For other people who might be more physical touch oriented, they just want to get confirmation that there's attraction there. And so I think it's different for each person, but it gets into this idea of text love languages and how different people may respond in different ways to messages.
Something just came up in my brain. Emojis! How important are emojis? I feel like people live with emojis and they express in emojis. It's happy face plus this plus eggplant equals water. How does that?
Yeah.
Tell me about emojis.
So,
is it cool to use? Is it annoying? When should we do it? When shouldn't we do it?
Right. So we could write a whole book just about emojis.
Was that included in your text communication and decoding?
Yeah.
Like the use of emojis?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. So emojis will tell us different things about people's personality. For instance, introverts use more emojis than extroverts.
Yeah, because if I don't have to talk, why would I talk? Even through text.
Exactly.
Too much work.
It's a way of conveying empathy for sure. Emojis add emotional nuance to a sentence. And it's to the point now where most people expect some emojis in language, and they feel like it's cold if it doesn't have it. But the different emojis that people use say things about them. And so extroverts are more likely to use the smiley face, winky face, thumbs up. And agreeable people will use a lot of hearts, the kind of lovey, let's make sure everybody's getting along, heart.
But I think emojis are also used to flirt.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing though, sometimes I'll get these hard eyes.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what is that? Is that hard eyes for me, or did they like my statement? So there's a lot of confusion with text. Does this help you to come up with a formula of what's acceptable and what you should do?
Well, so I wrote the book not to be proscriptive in the sense that I'm not trying to tell people what to do. It's
give them a little insight?
Yeah, it's meant to be more about insight about, so if somebody is texting a certain way, maybe you can better understand them. Not judge them per se, just better understand them. You know, I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way or a good way or a bad way.
Well, Mimi Ginsberg said that you're a neurotic narcissist and that you're not open.
Not at all. Like, there's someone for everyone, right? I mean, everybody has their own style, and hopefully they're trying to find somebody who matches their style and is compatible. You know, I think we all are hoping for good chemistry and good compatibility, and I break those down.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You know, I think that we use text to develop intimacy, and we use text to develop trust too in relationships as they progress. So it can be a way to reassure somebody. It can be a way to practice good, you know, to put into practice good tools in a relationship like curiosity, acceptance, respect. But it can also be a way to express criticism, contempt, or other kind of bad practices in a relationship. And so that's part of what you get into when you look at a couple's text exchange either in real time or look back. You can sort of see, okay, are they using good practices in the relationship or not such good practices?
Well, you weren't kidding. As I'm thumbing through the book, there are literally examples of multiple texts. And this is Speaking in Thumbs. I'm here with the actual author herself, a psychiatrist, decodes your relationship texts so you don't have to. I think this is the Bible for texting. Where can people get their hands on this, and how do they follow you for more insight and just support your work?
So you can get the book anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
That includes Amazon, local bookstores, online. And you can follow me at
Text Whisperer.
Text Whisperer is my Instagram handle.
I will put it there. I'll put it in the link so that you can follow her. And I'll also put the link of where you can buy the book. This is mine. I'm going to read it. And I'm going to be a text ninja now. So thank you so much, Mimi. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks.